Hi everyone and welcome back. So in this section we will go through how to actually determine what makes a good NHL team using a regression model on NHL team data scraped in the former video. If you haven't already watched the former video, you should go watch that one for more in depth of why this is interesting and how we obtain the data. We will quickly go over an overview of this video. So first of all, we will start with why this is interesting, what we are trying to predict, and what our initial hypothesis was. Then we will go to what we actually did to accomplish this, results and implications, and then finally some visualizations and a conclusion. So I'll briefly take you through our overall questions. So our overall question was, do better individual players make a successful team? To answer these questions, we chose to do 4 sub-questions, and this is the first part where we will try to predict what actually makes a good team. So, why are we trying to predict how well a team will perform in the NHL? Well, if we can accurately predict a team's success, they can focus on improving those areas. This will be valuable to any hockey organization wishing to improve, and even a regular person just wishing to do well in fantasy hockey. So what we are trying to predict with this data is how many points a team will actually get throughout a season, and thereby we would be able to predict if a team will succeed this season or not. So as mentioned, we're trying to predict a team's points for a season. It is important to note here that points are not directly connected to goals. So if one goal meant 1 point, there would be no reason for doing this analysis, simply because we would already know what predicts a point. So if this was the case, we might rather want to look at which factors predicts a goal, but this is not the case. So I'll just briefly clarify the points are accumulated over the season by either winning a game, which gives 2 points, getting a tie or going into overtime, which gives 1 point, and lastly winning in overtime, which gives a bonus point to the point already achieved from getting to overtime. So for this part of the overall project, we hypothesized that goals do not alone predict a team's success. So the overall goal here is to create a model which tells us which variables, so which predictors, we can actually use to predict how many points a team will get. And now I will quickly take you through how we actually did this. Well, as I told you earlier, we scraped the data using R. You can learn more about this process by checking out our part 1 of this series. So we then created a regression model, or a prediction model as you would also call it. We ran some diagnostics on this model which would show us if this model was a good fit or not. We had to remove a few variables as they were interdependent and therefore weren't a good fit for the model. We also removed a few observations to create a better and more precise model. And then we finally analyzed the data. So now I will take you through what we actually found. Well, first of all, we found that the stat called G plus minus is the stat with the most effect on a team's points. So G plus minus refers to the amount of goals a team scores minus the goals their opponents score against them. This does not necessarily mean that your team is more successful the more they score. This also indicates that your team is more successful the more the opponent team does not score. So this indicates that you might be more successful and get higher points the more goal your team saves. Because if you score a lot but your opponents do the same, then the score will be very low. And you have to keep in mind that this is a positive relationship to points. So the higher the G plus minus, the more points your team will earn. Second of all, we found that penalties drawn has a significant influence on points. This means that the more penalties the other team takes, the more points your team would get. So when a team takes a penalty, one of their players is out for X amount of minutes. This means that the team are now playing 5-on-4, which could indicate that it increases the possibility of scoring a goal and thereby also winning the entire game and thereby receiving points. So the third predictor is very similar as well. So this one concerns the penalty minutes taken by the other team playing minus the ones taken by your own team. So if the other team takes more penalty minutes than you do, then you should get more points. However, if the other team takes less penalty minutes than you do, then you should get less points. And this again indicates that penalties are an important aspect of scoring and ultimately winning a game, and thereby getting points. The fourth predictor is the amount of goals which are scored against the team within 60 minutes of time on ice. So this means that the more goals an opponent team scores, the fewer points your team would get. So this could again indicate that a good defenseman would be worth investing in to avoid the opponent team scoring too many times. So the last predictor is very interesting actually. SV percentage means the save percentage, and one would tend to think that the more goals a team saves from the opponent team, the better. But actually this says the exact opposite. Our model shows that this has a negative relationship, which means that the more goals a team saves, the less points they will get. Keep in mind though that this data set only covers one season, and this season, 2018, a lot of good teams had bad goalies, so this might explain why this is looking as it is. So, if we just quickly hop over to our visualization dashboard, you see here two predictors visualized in relation to points. Here in the first one, you see goals scored by a team minus the goals scored against them. You can see that the higher this value is, the better points a team would get, because this usually means that a team's win if they score more goals than scored against them. Up here, you just saw the Calgary Flames, who actually did pretty well last season. On the right side of the dashboard, you see the relationship between goals against a team within 60 minutes and points are negative. So the more goals scored against the team within 60 minutes, the fewer points they will get. This indicates that the team loses the more goals that are scored against them. If we then pop back to the presentation, we can quickly test how well this model actually predicts the final points. So for this, we chose to look at the Calgary Flames 2018 season. And here you see the calculation and how well the model actually predicts. So this model predicts that the Calgary Flames would get 110.5 points. And in reality, that year they actually got 107 points for that season. So this model is not too far off. It does give a good estimate of when the point scale a team will be. So now I'll take you through what we actually found during this process. Well, first of all, we saw that a team's success is not solely determined by how many goals they score, but also by how many goals that are scored against them. This indicates that a good defense player may increase a team's success significantly. Second, we found that penalties have a really big influence on success. So this indicates that a team's success is highly dependent on how many times their opponents mess up, but also how many times a team mess up themselves. So basically, your team should mess up less than your opponents to win and get points. And third, a team's success is not defined by how many times they save a goal. This indicates that a good goalie might not be worth investing in. Maybe defense players is the right way to go instead. So this wraps up this part of our NHL data predictions. I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for the next part where we'll go more into depth with measuring the success of individual forward players.